Well, hello, good morning, happy Sunday. This is an unusual situation. You'll never see me generally do a live stream on a Sunday. It just doesn't happen. Sunday is kind of a day of rest and a day to kind of revamp and get ready for the new week coming. So I usually set Sunday aside and I don't go in front of the camera. I don't even usually go to the workshop a whole lot. But today's an exception because Pat, that owns this 19E Special, is incredibly motivated, excited to get here to pick it up today. She's got some busy things happening during the week. And so coming here on Sunday to pick it up really worked out best for her. And so we've got to get this machine in front of the camera underneath the bright lights before Pat gets here. So you can kind of check out this 19E Special. You may have seen other videos done on the 19E Special before, but I'm going to point out some things on the machine that you may not have heard before or you may not have seen before on this machine. So I think it'll be a fun live stream. It's not going to be an incredibly long one because Pat's on her way here, but we'll cover a lot of the fun aspects of this machine and also draw a distinction in how this machine differs from, say, the 19E or the 21A or any of the other green machines that you've seen on this channel. So I think it'll be a lot of fun to find out why this machine, like I said in the title, why is the 19E special? What makes it so special? You'll enjoy learning more about this machine today. I'm going to look at the live chat real quick. I do not expect a big audience today because it's Sunday, and usually our live streams are on Saturdays and on Tuesdays. Saturdays and Tuesdays, as you know. So if we have a fairly decent turnout today, I'm going to be kind of shocked and almost surprised. This live stream will serve as a video later for others that are wanting to better understand what makes this machine special, what sets it apart from other Swedish beauties, and why did the Swedish people make this machine? Why go this direction with this machine when they already had a great system in place with a series of cams, A, B, C, D, E, and yeah, I mean, we'll cover all that, and then you'll better understand. So, all right. So I'll say good morning real quick to the folks that are here. And yes, Susie is here, and also Candido. And I think that's it. We have others in the shadows right now. As far as the live chat, we only have two of our leadership team members, and Candido is a very recently appointed leader on this channel, and it'll be fun to see what he does in the role. It'll be fun to see what sort of interaction he has with the rest of the family during regular live streams on Tuesdays and Saturdays. That'll be a lot of fun. And hopefully the weather is good out in New York right now, and also next door in Minnesota. We've had a real hot spell here, as some of you know. It has been ridiculously hot for the Midwest. In fact, I have a number of friends. I have a number of friends and followers that kind of watch the weather up here in Wisconsin, and they live either in Arizona, they live in Florida, and certainly lots of other parts. But I was talking with Emma the other day, and she said, because I showed her the temperature on my car, she said it's hotter in Oconto right now than it is in South Florida. It's hotter in Oconto than South Florida. So now today it's a little bit more temperate, and I'm hoping it'll continue to cool off a little bit. I don't mind 70s and 80s, but when we get up into the 90s, it just gets to be kind of ridiculous in this neck of the woods. So hopefully in Minnesota and New York and other places where our friends are watching right now and will watch later, hopefully your temperatures have been a little bit more calm, a little bit more moderate, a little bit more temperate. Okay. So let me grab the camera again. I just set it back down. I have no idea why. But let me grab the camera again and see if I can give you a quick walk around this 19E special and give you a little bit better appreciation as to why this machine is special. What makes it different? What makes it unique? So the front of the machine is not going to be really a standout from what you've seen in other Swedish beauties on this channel. It's not going to be a big standout. We've got feed dog drop right here, just above the beautiful emblem. And if you didn't know it, the reason that the Husqvarnas, the reason the Husqvarnas have this royal crest is because the birthplace in Husqvarna, what eventually became the sewing machine factory, started back in the 1500s as a drilling and grinding plant. And it was decreed by the King of Sweden at the time to have this drilling and grinding plant put together. They made musket barrels there. They made a number of other, a number of other specialized goods at that factory. And then eventually the demand for musket barrels and some of the other things they were making started to lose steam. So they said, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? What are we going to make? And it dawned on them that they could make sewing machines. And that started right around 1872. 1872, they started making sewing machines. And their first machine was the Northern Star. And it just grew from there. It grew and grew and grew and grew. They moved into a class 20 series. They moved into a class 21 series. And eventually in the late 1950s, early 1960s, they moved into a series that was very specialized, introducing Swedish beauties that no longer needed that black cam that is so difficult to find. These machines take a very specialized black cam, and this machine kind of answered the question of, can we still do decorative, ornamental, utility stitching beyond straight stitching without those black cams? And so the engineers in Husqvarna said, yep, we're going to work on it. And they came up with this 19E special. We'll get around to the back of the machine and you'll see what I'm talking about more clearly. But again, we're talking about the royal crest and the king's decree that started all of this. And that's why a lot of people will say, you know, you can talk about other companies being around for 150 or 170 years or 175 years. Big deal. The roots of Husqvarna go all the way back to the 1500s. So they are considered one of the oldest sewing machine companies as far as the depth of their roots and eventually getting into sewing machines of any company in the world. So, but walking around this machine again, the basic stuff that a lot of you have seen before many times, feed dog drop here. When the little white dot is at the 12 o'clock position, the feed dogs are fully engaged. When you turn it clockwise down to the 6 o'clock position, the feed dogs are going to drop, and then you can do free motion quilting and freehand embroidery. You don't need a darning plate, obviously, because the feed dogs go below the throat plate and they're not going to be getting in your way. Here we've got the stitch width control and also a special little tab that you can push to generate automatic buttonholes. It does it in 4 stages, and you just push it. It does one stage, push it again, does another stage, and so on and so forth. Never really use it, but some people love the feature of this being offered on this model, and really all of the Husqvarna models. The Husqvarna models offer this auto buttonholer. We move up here, and we've got reverse in the middle. And I've said this in other live streams. This is not a single stage reverse where you have to push it in and hold it. You push this reverse in and down a little bit, and it locks in place. And that way you don't have to hold it in while you're finishing off, locking off that stitch line or whatever's motivating you to want to sew in reverse, and just push it in and up, and it pops back out again. You can certainly use it like a single stage, like this, but by getting it to lock in place, you push it in and then kind of flex that button down just a little bit to lock it in place. So if you've got an E-series Swedish beauty and you didn't know that the unique feature on your E series machine, whether it's a 21E or a 19E or a 19E special, is that it has a two-stage reverse. Husqvarna always listens to their customers, even today, and they try to adapt their machine designs and engineering and setup to better accommodate their customers. So really, really a nice addition that the 21As and some of the other earlier series class 20 machines do not offer. Here's our stitch length. Huge range on stitch length, all the way from 4, which is going to give you about 5 stitches per inch. And you can crank it all the way down to realistically somewhere between, I would say, 0.4 and 0.5 is about the lowest I would go. If you go much lower than 0.4 or 0.5, you're not going to get much in the way of material movement, and you're going to have issues with feed. You're going to have issues with the thread bunching up and just creating a big mess. Some people push it a little bit further. I usually stop right around 0.4, but you could go all the way down to 0.3, 0.2, 0.1. Just don't go to 0. Don't go to 0 unless you have the feed dogs dropped and you're working with an embroidery type attachment or something like that. Then you can get away with it. But for most of the decorative sewing that we would do with this machine, we would be right around between 0.4 and 0.5, probably closer to 0.5. And then the other sewing we're going to be doing is going to be real close to 4. That's going to generate, again, about 5 stitches per inch. I didn't say it, but on the lowest range, you're looking at right around 30 stitches per inch, maybe a little bit better. The range as far as stitch length on the Husqvarnas is going to be just a little bit better on the high end and the low end than the Singers can offer. The Singers are going to be right around 6 stitches to 30 stitches per inch. The Husqvarnas are going to be around 5 stitches per inch, all the way down to about 35 stitches per inch. Can you imagine what that stitch is going to look like when you're generating 35 stitches in a one inch span? It's just crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Here we've got needle position. Very, very important to a lot of sewists. So the Husqvarna company offered needle position on this straight away. Upper tension. And the upper tension on this, I'm going to turn my light back on. The upper tension on this E series is going to stand out right away as different than what you'll see with the 21As and a lot of the class 20 machines. It's going to be a much broader, wider upper tension unit. And it's going to offer the same, it's going to offer the same function and feature as any other upper tension, with an added bonus, and this is true of pretty much all of the Husqvarna models. It's going to have an added bonus. If you look at the bottom of the tensioner, you'll see a little plastic tab. I think you can see that in the shot. There's a little open well, and then there's a little plastic tab that you can slide from one side to the other. That is going to be specifically to accommodate different styles of sewing, so that it will have a direct impact on the range of motion for your take-up spring. You can see your take-up spring right there. Some people refer to this as the check spring, but it really is the take-up spring, because its function in the sewing process is that in the sewing process, you'll notice if you ever glance at it, it's moving up and down with each stroke of the needle bar. And what it does is it grabs that thread on the needle bar upsweep, and it pulls that thread on the bottom of the material just a little bit more tight to make sure that you can maintain proper stitch definition on the lock stitch. That's the whole point and purpose of the take-up spring, is to accelerate the tightening of that lock stitch on the bottom of the material. Without this take-up spring, you could still sew, but you would have a lot more management issues in trying to maintain proper stitch balance, tension, and stitch quality. So it really is an essential piece and part of the upper tension unit. And when you move that little slider on the bottom of here that I showed you, what it's going to do is it's going to tilt this check spring or this take-up spring, it's going to tilt it either further down, reducing the range of motion, or it's going to tilt it further up, increasing the range of motion that spring can move. So if you move it to its max shortness, it's going to be down here just barely moving like this. Why would you need something like that? Why would you need to shorten the stroke of that take-up spring so dramatically? It's generally going to be because you're sewing something that's incredibly delicate, or you're working with a thread like a rayon thread that's incredibly delicate, and you don't want to stress the sewing process by the full range of motion of that take-up spring. So you reduce it so that it's putting less tinsel pull on the thread. It's obviously, if it's going this distance, it's not going to be putting a lot of stress on that thread. It's not going to be putting a lot of stress on whatever sewing project you're working on. It's going to be a lot gentler touch. If you move it the opposite way, it's going to move a lot fuller range of motion, and it's going to stress that thread more. When you're working with different heavier threads, it works much better, and it delivers a much more consistent balance of thread tension top to bottom. So if you never knew that, that's what the purpose of that little tab is down below, is to adjust the take-up spring for different types of threads you're working with, and also different types of materials you're working with as well. The same would apply for working with real delicate materials like satins and silks, maybe some ribbon material. You don't want that take-up spring yanking hard on that thread as you're trying to center that knot in real thin layers of material. It's going to make it a lot more difficult to manage the balance of that tension if this spring is pulling too hard on delicate materials. So that's the whole purpose of that. Inside of the faceplate, we look inside of the faceplate, you're going to notice, I'm going to set the camera down real quick. And eventually I'm going to take this bed off because we're going to have to get closer to the machine, and the bed, this big bed kind of gets in the way, doesn't it? But right in here, you've got your presser foot adjuster. And I'll try to get close to it with the camera so you can see it more readily. But I've talked about this in other live streams. You're going to be able to adjust this down or back in order to reduce or increase presser foot pressure. On this 19E special, if you want more presser foot pressure, say, for example, sewing genuine elk hide like we're going to be sewing first, then you want to bump up that presser foot pressure fairly significantly so you get good even feed on that material. It's going to be pushing down harder with the presser foot attachment against the feed dogs, and you're going to get a more even feed, a more full, robust stitch. It's going to look like a much more full stitch, not a compressed stitch like I talk about sometimes. So on this machine, we would rotate this wheel towards us, and it would increase that presser foot pressure. If we all of a sudden move to a lighter material, like some cottons or satins or silks or other materials of such, we can back off that upper tension or upper presser foot pressure by pushing this wheel to the rear. We push this to the rear, it's going to decrease the presser foot pressure. We pull it towards us, it's going to increase it. Now, what if we get into a situation where, even though we've got a fair amount of clearance, the presser foot here, we've got a good amount of clearance, I would say about 6 to 7 millimeters of clearance. But what if we have a real thick project? What if we have something crazy thick that we're wanting to get underneath that presser foot? Is there a way to do that when we're limited by what the engineers gave us by design, and we don't have a go around? Maybe we don't have a go around. And on this machine, we don't have that hyperextension where you can go to the back of the presser foot bar, you can push beyond its normal range, and you'll see that presser foot go up higher. This Swedish Beauty doesn't offer that. So what can we do to cheat to get more underneath the presser foot with the limitations even as generous as the clearance is on this machine. Does anyone know? If anyone knows, type it in the live chat. I've shown you this in other live streams, what we can do. And it's part of the reason I've got the faceplate open right now. What we can do in order to cheat and get more clearance. See what y'all are saying, maybe. Got to get real close. These glasses just aren't working too well for me. Yeah. Yeah, you're welcome, Susie. I'm glad to provide the tips. I'm hoping that the tips prove helpful to others. And Candido is absolutely spot on. Candido said, well, Scott, you can lower the feed dogs. You can take that control right here and you can bring it down to the 6 o'clock position, and that will give you another 2 to 3 millimeters of clearance. That's absolutely true. But what if 2 or 3 millimeters of clearance isn't enough? What if we need more than 2 or 3 millimeters of clearance? Let's say we've got a real thick quilt. We've got a super thick quilt with multiple layers, or we've got a biker's jacket and we've got extra padding and leather in there, and it's too bulky even if we drop the feed dogs. What else can we do to really accentuate the clearance on this Swedish beauty? And Susie's offering another thought. She said, what about adjusting the presser foot pressure? That's going to help us as far as downward force, but it won't give us any more vertical clearance. It won't give us any more vertical clearance. It's a great idea. It's a brilliant suggestion. Both suggestions that Candido and Susie gave, but it may not give us enough. It may not give us enough clearance. I'm going to show you something real quick here. This is just a stiffener that I use sometimes. So I'm going to fold this quite a bit. Fold this multiple times. Get a nice thick layer there. You can see that right there in the shot. Get us a nice thick layer. Now we're trying to get that underneath the presser foot, and there's not enough clearance. So we're going to try Candido's suggestion, which I think is really smart idea. We're going to drop our feed dogs over here and see if that will allow us to get in there and get it underneath the presser foot. So I'm going to drop the feed dogs. I just turned that down to the 6 o'clock position. You can see that right there. The little dot moved down to the 6 o'clock position. Will that be enough clearance now to get us in there? Almost. We are really close. We're really close to almost getting underneath the presser foot, but not quite. We got in a little bit further, but we didn't get in far enough that it's got good contact with the feed dogs. So what else can we do? I'm going to go ahead and raise the feed dogs again so I don't forget to put them back up. And now I'm going to show you on the inside of here, I showed you this little disc right here, this little disc on the bottom. Let me get even closer so you can see it. We got this little disc on the bottom. Rotate towards us if we want more presser foot pressure, or we push it away if we want less. But there's another really cool feature that they give us, this little tab right here that has little teeth on it. It looks like little teeth almost, doesn't it? If we take that and we push it in, all of a sudden you saw our little wheel right here drop down. See how much lower it is? I can pinch it back together again, so it's in the up position. And watch again, I'll try to do it above here so my finger's not in the way. If I push it, watch that little wheel. It drops way down, doesn't it? It drops way down. That's probably a better shot there now. You can see that wheel has dropped probably 3 or 4 millimeters. And what effect did that have? What did that actually do? What it does is it takes all of the pressure off of the presser foot entirely. Right now, there's no pressure whatsoever on the presser foot. And how do I know that? Because I can reach back here and I can grab it. Checking my camera angle here. I can reach back here and I can grab it and I can push it up way, way, way outside of the normal range of motion. If that spring were engaged by me pinching that back together in faceplate, we would not be able to move this. But imagine the clearance. I'm going to pull this material out real quick. Take a look at the clearance underneath here. This is standard, and then this is if we cheat and we release that pressure entirely, and then we push it up. Look at the clearance there. So there you've got that real thick quilt, or you've got that biker's jacket, or you've got something else super crazy thick. You lift it up like this manually, and then you slide that material underneath the presser foot. You let go of it, and then you need to remember to come back in here and re-engage the presser foot pressure by pinching these two together like this. And now that presser foot pressure is engaged again. You can see our wheel is back in the normal position. And now we have presser foot pressure, plus we are able to get that real thick material underneath the presser foot. And now we're able to resume sewing and finish that project that otherwise we would not have been able to finish. Now, with lesser thicknesses, you could try Candido's suggestion. It's a real good one. And that is just drop your feed dogs temporarily and then just re-engage your feed dogs again to the 12 o'clock position when you're ready to get back to sewing. So it's just a workaround because any machine, even some of the Japanese machines that have that hyperextension on the presser foot lever, are going to reach their maximum. And when you can bypass the pressure entirely by releasing it, so you can push that presser foot bar, hyperextend it vertically to get that thick material in, all of a sudden you're not hampered, you're not limited pretty much in any project that you want to take, because you gain, by doing that, you gain probably 5 to 6 millimeters at least of clearance, 5 to 6 millimeters of clearance. So yeah, just understand presser foot pressure. Lighter materials, less pressure. Heavier, thicker materials, multiple layers. You want to bump it up. And on this model, again, you're going to push this wheel towards you, bring it towards you. If you want less, you're going to push it away to the rear of the machine, okay? I don't think there's anything else I wanted to show you in there. Oh, I'll show you one other thing real quick that might be helpful to some folks. It might be helpful. If you've ever gotten a Swedish Beauty, and you go to, let's say you buy it from someone secondhand, and you stitch down, or maybe they even showed you that it stitches a beautiful straight stitch, and you're just like, wow, beautiful straight stitch. But then you get it home, or over time, you start having needles break. And it's because the needle is swinging wider than the opening of the throat plate, particularly to the right. It might be swinging too wide. That can be caused because someone will, with good intentions, they will go down to a machine like this, and they'll come into the faceplate area, and they'll look at all the mechanics. They'll look at these screws here that hold the faceplate cover on. There's one there. And they'll look at other screws inside of here. And what do we learn about screws on sewing machines? Because of vibration, they can work themselves loose, right? And so I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to be a responsible sewist, like Scott has taught us to do, like Candido has encouraged us to do, like Susie has encouraged us to do. Take charge of your machine. Take ownership of your machine. Emma says the same thing. Bill says the same thing. Veronica says the same thing. Michelle says the same thing. All of you say the same thing. So we get in here and we start tightening screws. And then all of a sudden, our machine starts breaking needles when we're using a stitch that requires needle swing back and forth. It's probably because, with good intention, we took this screw right here and we tightened it as far as it would go. when this machine is generating a needle swing type stitch, that needle bar is having to move left and right like this in the sewing process. What this does is this restricts the range of motion of that needle bar. It restricts the range of motion of that needle bar. So if you push it outside of that range, inevitably what's going to happen is it's going to swing too wide and it's going to hit that throat plate and you'll start breaking. So tighten everything you want to tighten inside of the faceplate. But if you're getting a good zigzag at the full width, if you're getting good output on the other stitches that require needle swing, don't adjust this screw right here. Don't touch it, because you'll throw the range of motion on the needle swing out of whack and you're going to start breaking needles left and right. The same thing is true not of this 19E Special, because it has a built-in cam in the back. You can see that right here. This is actually the cam stack that's built into this 19E Special. You just turn it and you can choose different stitches that the machine will output. On the other green machines, where you've got a little door you can open in the back and you got to have that black cam in there. I've talked about this in other live streams. If you own a Swedish Beauty that takes those black cams, never, ever, 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 ever operate that machine without a cam in the back, because you'll experience the same problems that I'm talking about with messing around with this screw inside of the faceplate area, that screw right there, by not setting a boundary as far as the swing of the needle. That's what on the Swedish Beauties that take those black cams, that black cam calibrates the needle swing on that Swedish Beauty so that it stays within the boundaries of that throat plate when it's properly adjusted. So you can get away with sewing a straight stitch on Swedish Beauties without a black cam in the back. Never, ever, 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 ever do it with a needle swing type stitch. Zigzag, blind hem, 3-point zigzag, whatever you're looking at sewing with that machine, always have a cam in the back. Don't have to worry about it with Pat's machine, because it's already pre-calibrated with that built-in cam stack in the back and that cam adjuster. So I hope that's helpful as well to any of you that have possibly had that issue. And if you go to a sewing vac, they're not going to have a clue what to do. They're not going to know. They're not going to understand what the calibration process is on these machines. And that's only one of the calibration points on these Swedish Beauties. There's about 16 calibration points on these vintage green machines that the average sewing vac, God bless them, they're not going to have a clue what to do. So, all I can say is if you have a challenge with your machine, be careful where you take it, because they might have the best of intentions, just like that sewist that went in here and started tightening down screws, had the best of intentions, but all of a sudden they change the parameters and the swing boundaries of that needle, and they're in a world of hurt because they're breaking needle after needle after needle. Not to mention, needles are one thing. Every time you have a needle strike on the throat plate, it causes scarring on that throat plate opening. It causes scarring that then, as that thread is coming up from the bobbin case, is going to start getting snagged on there and create all kinds of problems in the sewing process. So be incredibly careful. Be ambitious, as I and my leaders encourage you to do. I know that if you asked Susie or Candido right now in the live chat, hey, do you think I can handle this on my machine? You think I should do this? You think I should try this? They would probably encourage you to try it, but just be careful, because you can have the best of intentions and get a horrible outcome either on a Swedish or any other sewing machine if you go the wrong direction with something. Okay, enough blah, 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 blah. All right. I don't know if there was anything else I wanted to say. I think that's about it. I think that's about it in there. Okay, let me turn my light back on. And you probably know this already, but most of the time when I get a machine in, I'm going to change out the incandescent to a high output LED light. Almost no heat, much better light. And you can buy these online, and they're not as expensive as you would think. And it'll make a world of difference, where if you've got a lot of auxiliary lighting right now, because you've got the old style incandescent bulb in your machine. Not to mention you're probably feeling like you're an easy bake oven because of all the heat that it's generating. Then look at going online or go to Home Depot and get one of these lights for your Swedish Beauty. They have a little tabs on the bottom here. You can see there's a little tab there and a little tab on the other side. You just push it in and twist it, and then it locks right into place. Trying to do this one-handed is always entertaining. Oh, I'm trying to do it one-handed. Let me set the camera down. Let me set the camera down so I don't totally embarrass myself. There we go. And the brightness is really kind of cool. You can see that right there. All right. Anything else? Anything else that I wanted to cover real quick? I think that's about it. I mean, we can talk about one other feature on this machine. Let me grab a bobbin real quick, and I'll get our genuine elk hide into position here. There we go. So another really nice feature, and it's probably a good time just to take this. I'll just take this extension bed off now. And I don't know how she doesn't have a case for this machine. She doesn't have a carrying case, and so you brought it in. She had the extension bed attached to the machine, and it was like wick bed. And she showed me that on the back of here, this little pin support was missing. That little pin right there, you can see that. It supports the extension bed as you're using it, as you have that in place. This one right here. I'm kind of trying to look at the camera to see if you can see what I'm looking at. Yeah, I think you can. Yeah. So thankfully, I had a donor machine. I had a donor Swedish Beauty, and I was able to add that support on there so that when she's trying to use her extension bed, can you imagine trying to use an extension bed and it's wobbling from front to back the whole time you're doing it? It's just not practical. It's not practical to try to use that. So if you're missing one of these, definitely look at replacing it so you can enjoy that beautiful extension bed. Okay, let's look real quick. I'll show you some of the other cool things about this machine, and we'll talk more about the setup. So I just opened our little door here so we can access the bobbin case. I'm going to go ahead and pull the bobbin case out and get really close and show you one of the great features on this 19E Special. And it's also going all the way back to the Class 20 machines. It's called the Jam-Free Raceway. And the Jam-Free Raceway is something that the Swedish people came up with because they had complaints that as people were using heavier upholstery type threads or threads that just were a little bit more girthy, they kept jamming up the raceway. So they developed a floating hook system. It actually floats from side to side, if you see it wiggling there, and it floats from top to bottom. So as this is turning, and it's obviously a rotary hook system, as this is turning, it's able to allow that thread to pass through and complete the sewing process without getting caught up or getting snagged by a hook that otherwise would be rigid. Most hooks on most machines are going to be rigid as far as movement up or down or left or right. They're just going to spin, right? This one spins, but it also moves up and down and left and right simultaneously to allow thicker threads to pass through. So that's why they call it the Jam-Free Raceway. Okay? Yeah, really a nice feature. So let's talk a little bit about the bobbin now and the bobbin case. There's a lot of aftermarket bobbins being offered for the Swedish Beauties. Some of them are steel, some of them are aluminum. And I don't recommend the aluminum ones generally because they're lighter and they don't spin true inside of the bobbin case. They tend to wobble and they tend to vibrate around a little bit. That's great for the hook system, but it's not good for the bobbin in the bobbin case. So I'm going to pull this out. We'll do a little quick maintenance on this bobbin case. Also, I'll talk about the bobbin case a little bit as well. Let me grab some oil. Oh, where's my... and I've talked about this in other live streams. My my philosophy of oil is, back in the day when they were working on vintage sewing machines and antique sewing machines, they didn't have access to as many types of sewing machine oil as we have now. And so a lot of the machinists and a lot of the sewists of the day would use straight kerosene to lubricate their machines, and also to clean and to lubricate their motors as well. Kerosene has such a high flash point. You can even use it in areas where there's an electrical field, and you're not generally going to have any issue whatsoever, even if there's a little bit of dampness or residue left behind when you fire that motor up. Now, if you try that with sewing machine oil, you're very likely to get a poof, because the flash point is much lower on sewing machine oil than kerosene. But I use a mixture of the two on most machines. I've got different bottles that are pre-prepared. On this bottle here, I've got about a 50-50 mix. Actually, I think it's 60-40. 60-40 mix, 60% sewing machine oil, 40% kerosene. The reason I use kerosene with the oil is they complement each other, because the kerosene has a little bit longer lasting effect as far as lubrication, and it's also a natural rust inhibitor. So any sewing machine, if you go into a sewing machine, even like this Swedish Beauty like I did, and you look in there, you're going to see varnishing, but you're also going to see that some of the parts, depending on how the machine was stored, are going to develop surface rust on some of the metal parts. This will halt that and will actually begin to reverse it each time you use it with the sewing machine. Kerosene has the effect of not only protecting the machine from rust, but also halting it and also beginning to reverse it. In other words, it'll break that rust down, and it'll actually dissolve that rust from the inside of the machine, areas that you otherwise could not even reach. So that's why I generally use either a 60-40 blend, or on some of the Japanese machines that were post-World War II, where most of you know this because I've mentioned it like a billion times, but a lot of those Japanese machines, they harvested the metal from the ocean, from the Navy vessels, American and Japanese, that were sunk during World War II. The problem with harvesting metal that's been soaking in salt water is it's prone to rust big time because of the salt. So especially on the Japanese machines, I'll usually bump this up to 60 or 70% kerosene and 30 to 40% machine oil, because I know there's rust in there already. I know there's rust that is festering and continuing to grow. So this will help to bring that to a stop, and then eventually slowly begin to reverse that process. So, but the blah, blah, blah of this is maintenance on the bobbin case. Maintenance on the bobbin case is so critical. I talk about the raceway area where I showed you that hook system that moves left and right and up and down. When you're talking about this space here, I call it the brain center. I call it the brain center, or the place of creation. Kind of like the beginning of creation there, as that stitch is being created. So as we clean a bobbin case like this, we want to clean all the space that bobbin is going to be making contact with. Around and around we go. Around and around we go. Also on the little stem here that the bobbin mounts on as well, we clean around that. And then obviously on the machine, there's a little post that slides in here. We also want to clean the inside of that as well and get some lubrication on there. And you can just push the Q-tip swab all the way through. So when you pull it out, it doesn't come loose. Just pull it all the way through like that. See that? And then you got all, I don't know if you can see it, but as many times as I've cleaned this, we already got more dirt and more gunk off of this bobbin case that otherwise would be affecting how easily that bobbin can spin in the raceway area. So you want to do this probably, depending on what kind of materials and thread you're working with, I would say about every 4 to 6 hours of sewing. Just pop your bobbin case out, swab it, clean it. Also, obviously, on any bobbin case, you're going to have some sort of a release, like this little tab right here. See that? Take just a little bit of your oil and just put a drop of oil on the inside where that pivot point is, so that this stays nicely lubricated as well, and it doesn't doesn't get sticky. Yeah. And when we're putting the bobbin case back in, just put the bobbin case in your left hand. That's generally the way I do it. And the thread coming underneath like this. Line it up with that little slat. And then make sure you draw that thread all the way through underneath this tension band right here. We got to draw it all the way through. And then we've got good tension with that thread running underneath. That thread is running underneath this tension band now. And on these, you got two screws. You've got on the left, you've got a set screw. I think you can see that. You got a little set screw, which should be tight all the way. And then you've got an adjusting screw here on the right. And the adjusting screw, you can either turn it clockwise or counterclockwise, and that's going to impact your top stitch. The bobbin case is pulling down to define your top stitch. So the more you turn that adjusting screw clockwise, the harder it's going to be pulling down. The harder it's going to be pulling down. So if you got a loosey-goosey looking top stitch and you can't get the proper result by backing this off a little bit so that this isn't pulling up as hard, because it's a tug of war. This is pulling down, this is pulling up. If you can't get the results you want by adjusting this, then you can adjust this. So don't be intimidated. I know a lot of people are intimidated and fearful of working with the bobbin case. Just do it in really, really small increments. A little bit of an adjustment on this has dramatic impacts. So I would go like a 0.5 millimeter at a time, run another stitch line, see what results you get. And then if you have to adjust it either way, you can do that. Okay. So I'm going to pop this back in. Oh, I didn't show you. I actually ask you. You saw the way I put this in. When this is in the machine like this, which way is that bobbin going to be turning? Do you think that bobbin is going to be turning clockwise or counterclockwise? Because that's also really, really important as far as that thread being fed properly onto the bobbin case. So you saw the way I had it. I had the bobbin case in the left hand. I had the thread coming underneath, put it together, joined it together. When this is in the machine, which way will that bobbin be turning? Clockwise or counterclockwise? Gonna look at the chat real quick. Just bear with me for a second. Oh, hello to Alex as well. I didn't say hello to everybody yet. I think I did just at the very, very, very beginning. But I'll say hey to everybody again real quick. So again, a good morning to my dear friend Susie from Minnesota. My dear friend Candido, a brand new moderator from the great state of New York. Good morning to my Aaron Allen from the beautiful state of Vermont. Good morning also. Who else do we have? Good morning to Teresa as well. Great to have Teresa here this morning. And good morning to Kevin and Doreen from the great state of Iowa. And I should mention, we did like a little pre-launch of introducing their really cool Model 930 that was made in Switzerland, the Bernina. Ran into some technical difficulties on yesterday. So I'm going to be reintroducing Kevin and Doreen's Model 930, the Bernina record, depending on how you want to say it. And that'll be on Tuesday morning if you want to check it out. Really is quite an amazing machine. And I didn't want to cut things short with the technical problems we were having. So I'm going to start from scratch as if we never did any live stream at all on Saturday. And we'll start fresh on Tuesday and give this great machine the attention that it deserves. So you'll want to make sure you come back on Tuesday, same time, same bat channel, all that, 9:30 a.m. Central Time, and check out Doreen and Kevin's Model 930. I might also get their permission to give them a call during the live stream so they can tell the story of how they got this 930 and then also talk about the other 930 Bernina that they have that Kevin bought his bride back in the 1970s. So a lot of interesting stories. If they're willing to entertain me, I'll give them a call and we can put them on speakerphone and you can listen to their story directly from them. It's going to be better and more accurate than if I tell the story, you know? It's going to be better and more accurate. Who else? I think that's everybody, isn't it? I think I caught everybody. Oh, good morning to Alex as well. Good morning to Alex out in sunny California. Oh, good morning to Becky as well. Good morning to Becky. I see Becky is in there. And Becky is Robbo Was. Robbo Was, the screen name. If you're saying, hey, wait a second, I don't see any Becky. There's no Becky. Yeah, Robbo Was is Becky. Or something like that. I'm probably saying it wrong. Ha ha. Robbo Was. That's fun to say. It's almost as fun to say as Wawak. Wawak. And I'm still enjoying those shears a lot. These little clippers that Alex and his wife sent me. Wonderful, wonderful. Okay. So no one's answering that specifically. So I'm just going to tell you, or I'm going to show you. I'll show you. So this bobbin case, the way we set it up, again, we were holding the bobbin case in our left hand. We were holding the bobbin in our right. The thread was coming underneath. So when this is in the machine like this and it's sewing, that bobbin case is going to be turning. Not sure if you can see that or not. Maybe you can. It's turning counterclockwise, isn't it? So just be aware of that. If you got one of these Swedish beauties, it's going to be the same for the class 20s, the class 21s, all of the green machines. When you are putting that bobbin case and bobbin together, make sure that when you do the little thread pull, that bobbin is turning as if it's in the machine, it's turning counterclockwise. Also, as far as tension, I've said this lots of times, but as you're pulling this thread, you should only be feeling about 3 to 4 ounces of pressure before that thread is released. There's some people that talk about holding the bobbin like this and bouncing it. And if you bounce it, it should slowly drop down just by force. That's not always the best way to measure whether or not you've got appropriate tension on the bobbin case. I don't necessarily recommend that method, although a lot of people try to sell that method. I recommend our hands are generally very sensitive, and we can feel pressure and appropriate pressure. And I would just say, get a pull. It shouldn't have a gross amount of resistance. It should pull out with some resistance, but it shouldn't feel like you're catching a big fish, if that makes sense. Okay, let's get that back in. And then we're just going to pull up our thread like we would on any other sewing machine. We'll kind of give a hold on that back thread. We'll rotate our balance wheel towards us. And we'll get that thread to pop up. There we go. And I didn't specifically show you, but you know, when you go to the effort of cleaning your bobbin case, like I showed you with the Q-tip swab and the oil, when you have that bobbin case out, when that bobbin case is out, take a Q-tip swab and just gently swab the inside of that raceway as well. You don't want heavy oil on the raceway. You want just a light glaze of oil. And if you were to contact the people back in the day in Sweden at the Husqvarna factory, their people would tell you that because their raceway is designed to float left and right and down, that it doesn't require lubrication. I disagree, because you've got all of those mechanics down there, and that's part of the reason that they've got if you ever take off a free arm on one of these green machines, you'll see that they've got a long lubricating pad that allows oil to wick off. You kind of dampen that pad, and then over time that oil wicks off inside of here, and it kind of floats around the machine a little bit. It goes into the raceway, and it provides like an auxiliary means of keeping the machine properly lubricated. But you still want to swab the inside of that raceway with the bobbin case out, because what it's going to do is it's going to get the extra debris that your thread is carrying and everything else, and keep that area nice and clean, and keeping it just with a light little slippery edge to it, so that thing moves freely and nicely. Okay. So the Swedish are very smart, but sometimes we can agree to disagree agreeably, right? And I've worked on thousands of Swedish beauties, so yeah, I think that that's good advice. Okay. I'll wait to show you the slow, when we actually use the slow gear. I'll show you that slow gear. When we did that pre-introduction of the Bernina model 930, right? Yeah, 930. I had to look. I was thinking in German. When we did that pre-introduction of the 930 yesterday, I talked about the electronic that machine has, where it reduces the machine by 50%. On this machine, it's not an electronic slow gear, it's a mechanical slow gear, and it's going to gear the machine down so it's slowing at 1/5 of the normal speed. So differences between the different models and makers, but all of them eventually figured out that their sewists, their customers, wanted to have access to a slow gear. They definitely wanted a slow gear. Okay, so now I can move this machine back just a little bit now that I took that extension bed off, get it more centered. I think I'll also move it back a little bit, so at certain points I can maybe bring the camera to the front a little bit. Oh, I know. I'll show you one other thing. Sorry. Show you one other thing, then we'll jump into this. All of these foot controllers for the Swedish beauties are going to look similar. They're all going to have the royal crest. They're all going to have the same bust style design. They're all going to look nearly identical. But if you order a replacement original foot controller, say on Etsy or Pinterest or eBay or something like that, make sure you look at the pictures real carefully to make sure that the foot controller is compatible with your Swedish beauty. You're going to see that there's a little data plate on the back. I'll see if I can give you a shot of that. There's a little data plate, and it's going to tell you generally the models that that foot controller is compatible with. And the reason there's compatibility differences is because of the motors and the capacitors and the engineering of that motor that's in that specific model. They're going to vary between the green class machines. And so having the right foot controller is going to give you the best performance from that motor and keep the capacitors from blowing up on you. So this is the data plate on here. It's showing you that it is compatible with the Model 19. Hopefully you can see that way at the top. Right on that top line right there. So this foot controller is compatible with the Model 8, the Class 8, the Class 19, the Class 21, and then also the 2000 series Colormatic machine. And the 2000 series Colormatic, again, was that machine introduced back in the 1960s and was the very first Colormatic machine that Husqvarna presented to their audience, to their customers, as an easy machine to operate, because all you had to do is match the colors. So this covers a wide scope of the Swedish beauties, where some of the foot controllers don't, that look identical. Okay. All right, let's actually do some sewing on this machine. I'm going to try to lay down a straight on this genuine elk hide to start us out. Oh, I didn't talk about the needle. The needle, I think I've got a case around here somewhere. The needle that I'm using today is this needle right here by Schmetz, obviously. And it's a size 90-14. And it's specifically the anatomy of this needle is set up for leather sewing. So this should do really, really well on this genuine elk hide. Whereas a universal needle could pull it off, but this needle is specifically designed to accommodate the leather better. Okay. Get a quick drink of water and then we'll jump into this. I'm actually pleasantly surprised to see how many people have joined us on Sunday. And I saw that Susie had kind of asked the audience, do you want to possibly see more Sunday live streams? Generally, I don't do them, but if all of you find that the live streams would be something you would be willing to dedicate time to on a Sunday morning, we can talk about that. We can consider that for sure. Okay. I think I'll leave that light off. That light off, you're able to see things just a little bit better. All right, so let's put this to work. The other thing I'll tell you on this 19E special, way over here on this side of the machine, right inside of this housing right here, we have a short belt that's going to be between the motor output pulley and the bobbin winding assembly. So it's going to run from here to here. And on this particular model, and the same is true of a number of the 19Es as well, it's going to be a cogged belt. A cogged belt means it has tiny little teeth on it that interface with the pulleys that also have little notches to accommodate that type of belt design. The problem with these, let me say it this way. The great thing about these cog belts is that they generally provide much more even traction and they're not impacted as much by glazing. It's kind of a contrast. Let me show you the contrast so you can understand kind of what I'm talking about. Let me see if I can find a comparison here. Okay, there it is. So this isn't going to be, these are two different length belts, obviously, but whereas most of the series are going to have a V-style belt like this between the output pulley on the motor and the bobbin winding assembly, over time as these are turning, they tend to get glazed on the inside and they start to slip. The short belts on the 19E special and the 21E, the 21E and the 19E and the 19E special on the E series Swedish Beauties. Many of them between the motor output pulley and the bobbin winding assembly are going to have a cog belt more like this. That's going to have the teeth on it. So that's really great because the teeth then fit right in the notches that are built into those pulleys. So you get generally better traction and you don't have the issue of glazing as often or as commonly. But the other problem is if you accelerate and over time those belts become a little bit more brittle and a little bit more stiff, you'll start to lose the teeth on the belt. And the belts are very, very difficult to replace because they're not made anymore. You have to find suitable replacements or change the pulleys on the motor side and on the other side on the bobbin winding assembly and go back to a V-style belt like this. But I just wanted to point out that you may see me so that I don't stress this belt because the belts that are in this machine were not replaced because I felt that they were still serviceable. But you may see me reach up and give the balance wheel a little bit of a hand start on some of the heavier sew-offs because I don't want to potentially damage or lose any of the teeth that might be on that belt that's in there so that it'll last pat longer before we eventually have to look at replacing it. I don't replace belts willy-nilly unless they need it. If they're still serviceable, if they're not glazed, if they're in generally good condition, I'll leave them alone because it's an expensive investment for the customer to replace belts on these machines. When you're looking at replacing both belts, you're looking at almost $100 just for the belts. So if I don't have to do it, I always try to think about the customer like family, and I don't want to take advantage of the family and say, oh yeah, your belts were horrible. Your belts look like they had gone through through the dishwasher. They were horrible. If they're serviceable, I'm going to keep them, but I'm also going to protect them while they're in the workshop as well. Hopefully that makes sense. All right. I think that's the last thing I wanted to blah, blah, blah about. Thank goodness, right? Scott's finally blah, blah, blahing. He's done. Done. All right. Let's try a straight stitch, and we'll buzz down this genuine elk hide, and then I'll try laying down a zigzag next to it as well, so we can look at them side by side and kind of look at the stitch quality of this 19E special. And I didn't say it specifically, but when you open up the faceplate, right here on this edge is where the serial number is. And I'm not aware of any online source that has a serial number summary for the Swedish Beauties. I was privileged. Many of you might, if you've been with me for a long time, you might remember Hans from Norway. Hans served on the leadership team like Candido and Susie and helped out in many ways. And he was able to, through his channels over there in Norway, which is right next door to Sweden, he could get a hold of the original factory list of the dating of these Swedish Beauties. So if you have a Swedish Beauty and you're always saying to somebody, well, it's from the 1950s, well, it's from the 1960s, and you want to have a specific year date, I can't give you the month, I can't give you the day, but if you want the year date, send me a message or type your information into the live chat, and one of the leaders will copy it down and text it to me. And then at the next live stream, I will revisit that and tell you what year your machine is. That way you don't have to say 1950s or 1960s. You'll know the specific year that machine was manufactured. So, all right, blah, 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 blah. All right, let's actually put this machine to work. All right, straight stitch to start, and then we will move into a zigzag. Here we go. Whoa, slow down, baby. Slow down, slow down. Slow down, slow down, slow down. I know you're excited. I'm excited too. We're all excited, but don't go turbo on me. Don't go turbo. All right, now let's lay down a zigzag next to it. And the thing I'll tell you, when you're sewing leather like this genuine elk hide, when you move from the straight stitch, and I'm doing the longest straight stitch, I've got the setting turned all the way up to 4 on our stitch length control right over here. When you move to that needle swing stitch, the zigzag, you might have to bump up your upper tension just a little bit, because again, as you have that needle striking the genuine elk hide, the wider that bridge point is between each point that needle is hitting and the span of that thread. Think of the span of the thread almost like a bridge, and a bridge needs different support points to be safe, right? So when you're stretching that thread further out between different needle points with any stitch at all that requires swing motion of the needle bar, you might have to bump that upper tension up to maintain stitch quality. We're going to try it without doing that, without making any adjustment. And if it looks a little bit weak, then we can always adjust that upper tension up to tighten that lock stitch up on the bottom. Okay. All right, let's lay down a zigzag now. So to do a zigzag, all we're going to do is we're going to take our stitch width controller here, and we're going to turn it somewhere between 0 and 4. I'm going to go all the way to 4 so we can really see how our tension is being maintained. Are we going to start to get a loose looking stitch on the bottom because we're bringing it so wide and so long? The widest point, the longest point. Let's see what we get. Let's see what we get. And also, I'm going to remember, let me back the camera up. I'm going to remember also to start with my needle take up lever here, my take up bar, It must be Sunday. I can't speak English. I can't speak any language. I'm going to rotate the balance wheel and bring this take up this take up thingy right here. Oh my goodness. I'm going to take it to the highest point. So it's just beginning to do the downstroke right there. You can kind of see that if you look real close. See how it's on the downstroke? That's the best way to launch any sewing machine if you're able to do it. It's going to loosen up the binding of the mechanics and give a real nice fluid start. Take up a lever. I've got, oh boy. I better get a Diet Coke pretty quick. You never know, right? All right. Let's lay down a zigzag and see how we do as far as maintaining proper tension. Here we go. Yeah, double check, double check. Yep. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Good. I talked about calibrating the calibrating points on a Swedish Beauty and the calibration of the bobbin case in relation to tension. And yeah, we've got a good looking zigzag as well. Our tension was not impacted, even though we have needle swing involved. So that's good news. Very good news. All right, let's take a look at this stitching finally now. So straight stitch on the top, zigzag on the bottom. And if I go a little bit weird on this, it's because I'm looking over my shoulder at the laptop so I can see if I've got it lined up and if the camera is focused on it. Can't tell if the camera's focused or not. Maybe I should try it like this. There we go. There we go. Now it's focused. Trying to move my finger out of the way. Very, very good looking zigzag and a very good looking straight stitch as well. And again, this is genuine elk hide. Genuine elk hide. About 4 ounces of leather. About 4 ounces of leather. Beautiful stitching. Very, very nice stitching. See if we can get away with turning it this way now. And I just heard a text message come in, so we check to see who that is shortly. Getting a little bit of a shadow of the light. Let me move the camera this way a little bit so it's more under the light. See if that helps. Yeah, that does help. There we go. Lighting is so important when you're shooting a live stream and when you're doing video and stuff. And I'm not a master of it, but I'm learning. I'm learning. But that is some lovely, lovely stitching. Again, look at the edge right there. Give you an idea of the thickness. That is not a thin leather at all. It's about 4 ounces of leather. 4 ounces of leather approximately. All right, so beautiful stitching. You've seen it a couple times. I've gone across. Very, very nice stitching. Totality of the stitching. There we got it. Very, very nice. Turning it over, and again, look at the thickness. If you don't think that's thick leather, then contact me. I'll mail you a sample. You can try it on your Swedish Beauty. Lock stitching. So our lock stitching on the back. Try to get really close. Got to kind of pull it back a little bit because of that nap on the leather. Beautiful stitching as well. And the balance and tension, considering that we're sewing at the widest, longest zigzag that we can do on this machine, is really, really quite impressive. Really quite impressive, the balance. All right, let's try it like this, see if you can see it even better. So I would give that a definite pass. A definite pass. Gorgeous straight stitching and zigzagging on this genuine elk hide. Just spectacular job by this 1966 19E special. Really quite lovely stitching. Oh, there you can see it even better from that angle. See the angle of cameras? Isn't it weird? You find the right angle and all of a sudden it's like, hey, there they are. There's the stitches. There they are. Whoa. Whoa. I'm so easily entertained, aren't I? I'm so easily entertained. All right, enough of that. Enough of that. You get the idea. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous stitching job. And I love starting out with elk hide. I love starting out with elk hide so that anyone watching can go, wow, I didn't think of the Swedish Beauty as an incredibly strong machine, but if it can sew through elk hide like that, 4 or 5 ounces of leather, and I didn't even do a hand start on that, it gives you an idea of the power of this machine. Does anyone know what size engine, as our European friends refer to it, what size engine or what size motor this Swedish Beauty has? This 1966 19E special. What size motor does this machine have? Does anyone know? What size motor? Go over here by the live chat real quick. Oh, my favorite lady from Vermont says, "What about 1.2?" You're really close. You're really, really close. It's not 1. Most of the hint, I'll give you all a big hint. The majority of the green machines are going to have either a 1.0 or a 1.5 amp motor. 1.0, 1.5 is pretty much standard with the green machines. And Susie's saying, what about 1.5? Some of the 19E specials actually do come with a 1.5, but this one that belongs to Pat is actually going to be a 1.0, a 1 amp motor. But I've said it before, once I get done optimizing a motor, once I finish optimizing a Swedish Beauty motor, I will put one of my 1 amp motors against a 1.5 amp motor of a non-optimized Swedish Beauty any day of the week. And I will just take it out. I will just knock it off the block, or however you would say that. I will beat it big time. One of my optimized 1 amp motors will beat a 1.5 amp that's not optimized any day of the week. So this has a lot of power, even though it's a 1 amp motor. It's going to have power for Pat. I have no doubt at all. So yeah, it has a 1 amp motor, but some of the 19 series machines in the E class did come with 1.5 amp motors too. Okay, let me see what our text message is. Oh, it's one of my friends. One of my friends from Illinois just saying, "Hey, happy morning." So happy Sunday. Good morning to Roberta down in Illinois. Isn't it fun to get greetings from people? They're thinking about you. They're wondering how you're doing, and they just shoot you a quick little text message. There's the wonder and the beauty of technology, isn't it? But I thought it was a question relating to the live stream. No worries. Okay. Okay. So let's get back to this machine. We've seen it go through elk hide like it was hot knife through butter, as they say. And now let's do some other sewing with this machine. And also we'll have a chance to put that built-in cam stack to work as well. The built-in cam stack is what makes this machine special. I mean, all Swedish beauties are special, right? Of course they are. But because of the cam stack design of this machine, that's why they labeled it specifically a special machine. Now I'm going to give all the other Swedish beauty machines a complex. I'm going to give them a complex and like, whoa, what's wrong with us? Nothing's wrong with you. Nothing at all. So here are some of the sew-off materials that I have prepared just to show you. And I want to get your input on what you think. So I've got 100% cotton with a stiffener. We're certainly going to sew all of the stitches that are available on this 19E special. We're going to sew all of the stitches on this 100% cotton because cotton is one of the most common materials that a sewist is going to be using. Then I've also got this commercial grade canvas. Commercial grade canvas, I think it's fun to see if we can lay down maybe a zigzag or even a decorative stitch on this commercial grade canvas. So the reason I'm showing these to you, if you want to see me start with something in specific, just type it into the live chat. Say, hey, let's start with canvas. Hey, let's start with cotton. Or let's start with velvet. This is a velvet ribbon material like you would use around the holidays, around Christmas time. I've got some of this that we can sew on as well. Protected full grain leather. I've got this in a circle so that we can try around and around and around and around and around and around and around. I love to do that. We'll probably do it with a decorative stitch. That way it's really kind of looks pretty like that as well. So we've got protected full grain leather also. Then I've got a big chunk of saddle grade leather. I have no idea what my thought was on this, other than maybe I could use the slow gear and I could stitch around the edges to show how that slow gear gives you a lot more control as you're sewing different materials. Maybe we can do that with this. You let me know your thoughts on that. Or I can get my Guggenheim scissors and I can cut this down the middle and we can go through 2 layers of saddle grade leather on this live stream as well. I'm going to leave that up to the audience. That's up to you guys and gals to tell me, what should we do with this saddle grade leather? Should we do controlled sewing around the edges with the slow gear? Should we cut it in half and go through 2 layers of it? Yeah, it's up to you. Let me know. I'm going to set that over there. Good gravy. I've got more of this saddle grade leather. I don't know what I was planning on doing, but I got 2 layers of saddle grade leather that we can mess around with during this live stream. Then I've got protected full grain leather, just like our circle. It's the same type of leather. And I explained this in another live stream. I get this leather from a local business that does reupholstering on the private jets, the Lear jets, the real fancy jets that the rich people fly on. This is the type of leather that's underneath their bottom. Or as our people say in the UK, this is what their bum is sitting on. Their butt, their bum. So protected full grain leather is also a great leather to sew, and we can decide what we're going to do with this as well. And again, I've got 2 layers of this. Maybe I'll save some of this for our live stream on Kevin and Doreen's 9:30 Bernina on Tuesday. Yeah, I got double everything, like double mint chewing gum or something. All right. And then I've got some of this bubble gum material. You see why it's called bubble gum material, especially here. A lot of vinyl in this stuff. It's made to look like leather, but it's not leather. And this stuff is a lot of fun to sew. And it generally does if your machine is running at the top of its game, it does a really good job of presenting stitches too. So it's fun to look at stitches on this bubblegum material. But this is another material I have ready. And then finally, good old-fashioned denim. But this is not really genuinely good old-fashioned denim. This has a spandex or a vinyl junk built into it that makes it real stretchy. You see this? It's got like a spandex material in there because maybe that's what the young people like. They want it to like fit to their skin like a scale on a snake. And so it's got that real stretchy material in there. And I'm not a real big fan of this denim, but I've got lots of it, so I'm trying to use it up. So we got this denim, and we can look at going through multiple layers of this, maybe 4 layers, 6 layers, maybe even 8 layers of denim we can do on this live stream. All right, what else? I think that's it. So let me know your thoughts. I'll look at the live chat real quick and see what you were thinking as far as what we start with. Susie wants to see 2 layers of the saddle grade. 2 layers of the saddle grade. Okay, so let's start with the 2 layers of the saddle grade, and then we'll see where we go from there. And we will go with a straight stitch and a zigzag. I'm going to cut this in half then. So we have more of this pre-cut already for Tuesday's live stream. And I've given, I think, 3 of these away already. These are the Guggenheim professional tailoring scissors. I've given a number of sets away already, and I'll eventually be giving more of these away. So try to make the live streams as often as you can so that you can see the opportunity of getting a pair of these scissors. Or I think they call them shears. I shouldn't call them scissors. They're shears. And they cut all the way to the tip. That's one of the reasons that I really like them. A lot of scissors, you'll get to the tip, and then all of a sudden it runs into a problem. These just as razor sharp from one end to the other. And they have a lifetime warranty as well, which is really cool. All right, so let's do a straight stitch and a zigzag. Susie had wanted to see the saddle grade, 2 layers of it. We'll put it back to back so we can see the stitching a little bit more easily. And again, we've got the benefit today of a Schmetz 9014 leather needle. So we've got a little bit of an edge in being able to sew leather more easily and more effectively. All right, let's give this a go, see what we think. And with something at this level, I will be giving it a little bit of a hand start so I don't stretch that real tiny cogged belt that runs between the motor and the bobbin winding assembly. I'll give it just a little bit of a hand start to help it out. So we'll start with a straight stitch, and then we'll lay down a zigzag next to it. And again, this is 2 layers of saddle grade leather. This is the leather that they use to make gun holsters, and they make a number of other things for horses, equestrian type stuff. Just going to put these little clips on here to help me out a little bit. All right, so straight stitching and then a zigzag. We'll see how this 19E Special with that 1 amp engine does with this. See how it does with this. Checking my thread. Okay, I think we're ready. All right, here we go. Oops, beautiful stitching. Wow. And I can see, again, I talked about the importance of presser foot pressure. And when you're sewing something that's heavier or thicker or multiple layers, you've got to bump that presser foot pressure up even higher. If you don't do that, you'll still get a really good looking stitch, but it'll be just slightly compressed. And that's what we got here, where I've got the presser foot pressure up pretty high, but I obviously didn't have it quite high enough. And so the result is then we have, oh, okay. I was reading my screen across and it said 19E. I'm thinking, what is that about? I'm getting another 19E being dropped off on Monday. So you'll eventually be seeing another 19E on the workbench and in the live stream. Okay. Yeah. So the other thing I'm noticed a little bit of a compression on the stitch. And then I'm also noticing that our lock stitch is okay, but it's not as well defined as it needs to be for 2 layers of saddle grade leather. So I'm going to make an adjustment right now, recognizing that if it's struggling a little bit with a straight stitch, then it's going to be struggling even more when we put needle swing into the equation. So I'm going to bump up our upper tension temporarily. We're right around 6 right now with a top range of 9. So I'm going to bump it up to 7 just to give us a little bit of an edge as we're moving towards this zigzag. Just a little bit of an edge. I'm also going to go into the faceplate area, and I'm just going to bump up our presser foot pressure just a little bit more, couple turns. And again, I'm turning it towards me with this little dial to give it more pressure down. More pressure down. All right, so now let's lay down a zigzag next to this, and we'll see how it maintains tension balance, throwing needle swing into the equation. So I'm going to adjust my stitch width. I'm not going to go all the way to 4. I'm going to go right around to 3. I'm going to go to 3 on the stitch width, and then I'm going to go up to my stitch length, and I'm going to adjust it back to 3 as well. So we're not going quite as wide. We're not going quite as wide and quite as long as we did with a single layer of genuine elk hide. We're making it just a little bit more narrow and a little bit shorter due to the thickness of the saddle grade leather. There we go. Okay, so we've made a couple of adjustments getting ready for this next sew off. We've done a couple of adjustments. We bumped up the upper tension from 6 to 7, and then we bumped up our presser foot pressure up about almost 2 turns towards us. So this should help us out. Let's see how the machine does with a zigzag now. I'll call it a 3x3 zigzag, 3 on the stitch width, 3 on the stitch length. We'll see how this machine does with this. Get my take-up arm all the way up. All right, here we go. Yeah, that was the right choice. I think we definitely made the right choice. We've got very, very good stitch definition. Hey, Ken, it's Scott. I'm right in the middle. I decided to do a Sunday live stream. Is it okay if I call you back, buddy? All right, thanks, pal. That's a very dear friend of mine, and also in some ways a mentor. Ken has been in the sewing repair business. He used to have a sew and vac type place, and he's been doing it over 40 years compared to my 22, 23 years. So he's probably just calling to wish me a happy Sunday, kind of like Roberta was from Illinois. But it's always good to see Ken's name pop up. He really is. He's such a neat guy and has had so many neat experiences with a wide variety of newer machines primarily, and then also some vintage machines as well. So eventually I'll get him, he doesn't like to be in front of the camera. Eventually I'll get him into the workshop and involve him in a live stream, hopefully. Really a neat guy. Okay, so let's take a look at this stitching. Let's take a look at this stitching now. So we did our straight stitching first, and again, I'll show you from the side eventually what we just sewed through. There we go. And I did sew in a downward slope. That's me. I sewed in a downward slope a little bit as the material was feeding. I kind of let it go out of alignment a little bit, so it'll look like we were sewing downhill a little bit. And look at the holes in that leather down, especially down by the zigzag. You just get an idea of what that needle has to be able to do to get through that leather. What that needle has to be able to do to get through that leather. Just mind-blowing. Totality of the stitching, some really, really beautiful stitching by this 19E special from 1966. Some really beautiful stitching. Even in spite of my not sewing incredibly straight, it did a really, really good job. But it's so much fun to see those holes in the leather. Gives you an idea when it's trying to go through this much leather. Look at that from the side. It's trying to go through that much leather. How much force that machine has to generate to be able to punch through that with so much ease. Really is quite impressive. Lock stitch, look it on the back now. Just flipped it around. We'll look at that lock stitch on the back and see what we think of that. You'll notice the straight stitch. Look at that line of straight stitching on top. I was talking about the fact that I needed to bump up that upper tension a little bit when we moved onto this zigzag because the top stitch was okay, but the lock stitch on the bottom of here that we're looking at looked like it was a little bit weaker. And I'll get really close to it so you can kind of see what I'm looking at. It's still passable. It's still a good stitch, but it always can be better. And in this case, we needed to bump up that upper tension. Otherwise, we would have seen a looseness among these zigzags going across. Look at it like this too. This again is our lock stitching on the back. So just realize as you're working with different materials, inevitably, you're going to have to make adjustments to the tension. And if you're sewing a ton of a certain type of material, you'll find the sweet spot that works really, really well with that material. You'll find the sweet spot. So a beautiful, beautiful zigzag. We made that adjustment of presser foot pressure. We made that adjustment of upper tension. And we anticipated the need before we sewed off that line of zigzagging. And as a result, got a really, really good looking zigzag stitch from this 1966 19E special. Really, really good looking. If you look at it from the side, I'll kind of show it to you like this. This is our look at it from the side. You can see the edge of greatness on that straight stitch. You can see the edge of greatness, but it's just a little bit on the weak side. So if we were going to be sewing saddle grade leather, 2 layers of it all day long, we would bump up that upper tension to the point we have it right now, or maybe even a little bit higher. Crazy, right? That's crazy sewing, the thickness wise. But yeah, it gives you an idea then of how to address it. We know what to do if we're going to be sewing saddle grade leather a lot, but some really, really good stitching and really quite a great evidence of what a properly optimized 1-amp motor can do without any difficulty whatsoever. So far, we've only done 2 sew-offs. We've done 2 layers of saddle grade leather. We've done a layer of elk hide. Now we're going to move on to some other materials to give this machine a chance to show off its greatness with other materials as well. So again, these are the choices we have. If you want to chime in and give some input, we can do this stretchy spandex type denim. It's a spandex mixed with denim. Not a fan of this stuff, but I put it out there because it's a challenging material to sew. We've got this commercial canvas, bubblegum material. We've got protected full grain leather, also protected full grain leather here. We've got more saddle grade leather. We've got some of this velvet, Christmas type velvet, and then we have 100% cotton. So I will let all of you chime in if you want to chime in and let me know what materials you'd like to see next. And then we're going to be making some adjustments on that cam stack on the back to generate some of the other stitches that this 19E special can do. The reason that they call it a special instead of just a 19E is because of that cam function on the back. All right, let's take a look and see what y'all are saying. Okay, perfect. I see some really good interaction between 2 of the leaders talking about a manual, time, and sake of efficiency, especially with Pat, the owner of this Swedish beauty, showing up soon. Let me just kind of march forward and kind of bring you on a journey with me through the rest of the sewing that we're going to do with this 19E special. Let me bring you on a journey. Oh, water. Water is essential when you're doing public speaking, isn't it? If any of you have ever done public speaking, you know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. Okay, we've sewn super heavy. We've sewn super heavy. We've done 2 layers of saddle grade leather. We've done a thick layer of genuine elk hide. I'm going to move us over to the side now. I'm going to move us over to the lighter side with some of this holiday type velvet. This holiday type velvet. So let's go ahead and get this underneath the presser foot. And let's move to the lighter side now. The lighter side of sewing. And I'm going to make an adjustment on presser foot pressure. Again, go lighter. We want to reduce the pressure just a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and push our disc probably about 3 to 4 rotations. 3 to 4 rotations to lighten up that presser foot pressure, because we're going from leather now to velvet. We've got to accommodate for that. So I'm going to roll it back. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. I rotated it back about 4 revolutions on there. Okay. So what I'm going to do on this velvet, because of its texture, it's not going to be able to present a straight stitch with a lot of clarity. It's just not going to give us it's not going to give us the ability to see that straight stitch really well. So instead, what we're going to put down on this velvet is we're going to lay down a zigzag. We're going to lay down a blind hem stitch. We're going to lay down a 3-point zigzag. Yeah, I think those are we're going to lay down 3 different stitch rows on this velvet. 3 stitches that are possible because of that cam stack that is built into this 19E special. And I'll show you how to transition from one of the cam stitches to another. There's a special thing you need to do to make sure that you don't damage the machine. There's a special thing you need to do. All right, I'm just going to go with 2 of these clips. I think that's probably enough. All right, so first of all, a zigzag. And we were set at a 3x3 zigzag. I'm going to go down a little bit further to about a 2.5 by 2.5 zigzag. So what I did is I took our stitch width down to 2.5. I took our stitch length down to 5 as well. So the first thing we'll lay down is a zigzag. See what we think of this on this velvet material. Get my take-up arm all the way up. All right, so zigzag, and then probably a blind hem, and then a 3-point zigzag last. And those are the stitches that are part of this 19E special. It's got obviously a straight stitch. It has a zigzag. It has a 3-point zigzag. It has a blind hem stitch that it can generate based on the cams that are built into it, the cam stack. All right, so here we go. Start out with zigzag. I think it's 2.5 by 2.5, and then we'll go from there. And again, I'm sewing on velvet using a leather needle. I have no doubt at all, that since Schmetz Needles follows us on Facebook, and they also follow us on YouTube, the people that make Schmetz Needles, they're probably cringing while I'm sewing this while I'm sewing this velvet with a leather needle. But their needles are good enough. We can pull it off, I think. Hopefully. Okay, that back there. Now we're going to be moving into some of the other cam functions on this 19E special. Yeah, nice looking zigzag. I've got all kinds of junk stuck to this. Velvet is like, it attracts everything that wants to stick to it, doesn't it? It attracts everything, but a beautiful zigzag on this very, very delicate velvet material. So now we're going to move to another stitch that this 19E special will do. I think we'll go to a blind hem and then a 3-point zigzag. And we'll see how this machine handles those stitches as well. Now, the special thing you need to do when you're transitioning from one cam stitch to another is you've got to take the stitch width and you've got to take it down to 0. The reason we take it down to 0 is there's a little reader finger that reads that cam stack in the back. When it's set somewhere between 1 and 4, that finger is pressed into that cam stack. It's pressed into that cam stack. And we don't want to be moving that cam stack when that finger is pressed into it. So we take it down to 0 so that that finger retracts, and then the cam stack can be moved safely without potentially damaging that delicate reader finger, okay? So that's why we do that. The other adjustment we're going to make real quick is we're going to adjust our stitch length down a little bit. Take it down to about 1. Right about there. Now we need to go to the back of the machine and take a closer look at that cam stack adjuster. And I'm going to be shooting blind a little bit here because I can't see it. Okay, there, I can see on the laptop now. Now I can see on the laptop. So you can see right now we're set on zigzag. We're set on a zigzag stitch. What you need to do is you need to kind of gently push the knob in and give it a turn. And then I should be able to get it into the next stage, hopefully, of the next stitch. There we go. So I ended up going towards the 3-point zigzag. You can see I adjusted it now, so it's on the 3-point zigzag. So eventually we're going to go 2 clicks the other way and go over to the blind hem after that. Okay, so let's try this 3-point zigzag now on this velvet material and see what we think of that. The thing I need to remember to do so I don't end up just doing a straight stitch is I need to remember to take my stitch width back to somewhere between 1 and 4. I'll probably do it right around 3, 3.5. And that's just a discretionary thing. That's just my choice. You might choose to do it on 2. You might choose to set the stitch width somewhere entirely different. That's entirely up to you. Okay, so let's do this next stitch now. It's going to be a 3-point zigzag. Again, we're sewing velvet, and we're sewing using a 9014 leather needle by Schmetz. 9014 leather needle by Schmetz. All right, get my take-up arm all the way up. All right, here we go. Yeah, that looks, I like that. I like that. Now the last stitch we're going to do is the blind hem. I'm going to do that, and then I'll show you all of these stitches on this velvet material. But it's fun to go both ways, isn't it? It's fun to go both ways. We started out heavy, going with saddle gray leather and elkite, and now we've gone to the light side. So it gives you an idea that this 1966 19E special can sew pretty much anything it wants to sew with the proper adjustments. There's not going to be any limitations to what this 19E special can do. It can do it all, pretty much. All right, so now we're going to go over to the blind hem stitch. Again, we take our stitch width, and we got to take it down to 0 so that reader finger that's pressed into the cam stack right now is retracted, and we don't damage it by trying to force that cam. So now that finger is pulled back. Now we can go to the back of the machine, and we can rotate that cam adjuster to try to get our blind hem stitch. Checking my camera shot. I think that's pretty good. There we go. I'm looking upside down, so I think I did it. 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 So now we're set on our blind hem stitch. And we'll sew that on this leather, on this leather. We'll sew that on this light velvet as well, just like we did the other stitches. Okay, take up arm all the way up. There we go. Bring our stitch width back to, I think we'll go full length on this. We're going to go all the way to 4. So I took my stitch width all the way back to 4. We were down on 0, so that reader finger was retracted back. Now that we moved it to 4, that finger is pressed back into the cam stack. And I think we'll go just a little bit longer on the stitch length. We're going to go right around to 1.5. Why don't we go to 1 3/4? So 1 3/4 on the stitch length, 4 on the max on stitch width, and let's see what we think of this blind hem stitch. Okay, I'm going to stop moving the camera. I'll stop moving the camera. You have to actually move it back a little bit so I don't bump it with my arm. Okay, blind hem stitch. Let's give this a go. Here we go. Oh yeah, that's pretty. I like that. That's a nice one. Nice one. Yeah, it's a nice one. Yeah, some really good results. The only thing I'm noticing is, um, again, everything sticks to velvet, doesn't it? It's really annoying. The only thing I'm noticing is that we might want to consider, um, and actually, I'm looking at my take-up spring right now, and we might want to consider a little bit larger range of motion to generate even greater clarity on the lock stitching. And again, that's going to allow us to get a wider range with that take-up spring. But for right now, I'm going to leave it alone. Right now, I'll leave it alone, and we'll just take a look at this stitching to start. Stitching, by the way, that I didn't do a really good job of sewing straight, but you know what? It's kind of my thing. Kind of like coloring outside the lines. But I would definitely bump up the upper tension on this for sewing velvet for sure. Okay, so here's our stitching. We started out with a zigzag. We went to a 3-point zigzag, and then we finally did the bind hem stitch. So we'll take a real close look at these. Waiting for my camera to focus. It almost focused. We'll bring this even further into the light. It's thinking about focusing any moment now. It's thinking about it. Let's try it like this. There we go. Beautiful stitching. Very, very nice stitching. Very nice stitching. We turn it over, look at that lock stitch. Again, I think it's a good lock stitch, but it could be a lot better. It could have greater definition if we bump up that upper tension, or if we were sewing a ton of velvet like this, we could also adjust that bobbin case down just a little bit so we don't have to adjust the upper tension with quite as large of a range. But all in all, some really good looking stitching on a fairly tricky material. If any of you have sewn velvet before, it's not an easy peasy material to sew. It isn't. But I would definitely bump up the upper tension if we were sewing a lot of this material, a lot of it. Yeah, so I'm pleased with that. Some good looking stitching, lock stitch. Get it like that. There we go. Almost got it. Lock stitch and also the top stitch. Well, you can see readily there's an imbalance right now that we would have to address if we were going to be sewing a lot of velvet. It's a little bit of imbalance right now. That bobbin case is being a bully, and it's pulling down too hard. See if I can do that. See if that helps. Yeah. All right. Let me move that to the side. Check on a text message real quick here. And Susie sent me a quick text message. She said, we have Chisholm. We have Chisholm joining us in the live stream from Nigeria from Nigeria. So all the way from Africa. Isn't that the fun thing about our family of vintage and sewing enthusiasts is that we have friends all the way around the globe. And I don't know if our friend in Nigeria knows Swahili. I know just enough Swahili. I can say lala salama, which is a polite greeting in Swahili. And there are Nigerians and other folks that live in Africa that do speak Swahili. So hopefully you understand what I mean when I say lala salama. Yeah. Okay. Great to have you. Thank you for the heads up, Susie. Thank you. Thank you for the heads up. Always great to have friends from around the world for these live streams. Always great to have friends from around the world join us. Always fun. Okay. I think at some point I'd seen Susie write down that she wanted to see this awful denim that has this spandex in it. Look at that stuff. Watch. This awful spandex stuff. I'm not a fan of it, but it's fun to sew nonetheless. So I've got 2 layers of this right now. Let's see. I'm going to cut off this thicker edge right here. I really don't need it. Okay, so I've got 2 layers of denim. I'm going to go ahead and fold it. Let's see. That'd be 4. That'd be 6. Let me switch my cam adjuster back to a zigzag. We'll lay down a zigzag on this. Actually, it'd be kind of fun to lay down a 3-point zigzag on this. But the other thing I need to do real quick is I need to adjust our presser foot pressure back. So I'm going to bump this back. And the way you can tell kind of what you're working with as far as presser foot pressure, take your presser foot lever like this and just barely begin to raise it. You'll feel the amount of resistance of that spring pushing down. And then you'll have an inkling. You'll have an inkling as to whether or not it's going to be adequate for the sew off you're about to do. We're about to do between 4 to 6 layers of heavy grade denim that has spandex running through it. So we need definitely more pressure. It feels like it's enough, but I'm going to give it just a little bit more. Okay, that should be enough. So now what we're going to do is we're going to bump ourselves up. We got 2 layers. Let's see. 4 layers. I wonder if I should be that crazy. What do you think? Give me some input. Should we try 6 layers or 8 layers? 6 layers or 8 layers of this heavy grade denim that has spandex running through it? 6 or 8? Just type a 6 or an 8 into the live chat, and that's what I'll go with. This would be 8. I think this might be a little bit too much. That might be just a little bit too much. 6 would look kind of like this. Let's see here. 6 would look like this. That's 2, 4. This would be 6 layers. 6 layers of heavy grade denim. I'm thinking 8 might be going a little bit too far, but if someone wants to issue a challenge and say, let's try 8, if it's too much, we can always tear the stitches out and go for 6. That might be an option as well. So I'll see what y'all are saying. Susie is my gusto go-to girl. Susie is my gusto go-to girl over in Minnesota. And I thought she was going to give me a break and say, okay, just do 6. 6 is great. She's like, oh no, I'm not letting you off the hook, buddy. You offered the option of 8 layers. We're going to try 8 layers of heavy grade denim that has spandex running through it. That spandex gives it that stretchiness, which is also going to give a huge opportunity for skip stitching. A huge opportunity for skip stitching on this. So let's see what we get. We're going to go with 8. Susie from Minnesota has issued a challenge. So we're going to try 8. We'll see how we do with that. But I'm going to move us back to a zigzag first. go back to that cam adjuster. Turn my stitch width down to 0. All right, we're back on zigzag now. Move our stitch width to right around 3. I think 3 is enough. I don't know that I want to go to 4 when we're doing 8 layers of heavy denim with spandex. So we're going to set it on a 3x3. We'll set it at 3x3. So I basically move my stitch length to 3. I move my stitch width to 3. And we've reset the cam to a zigzag. I'm still going to go a little bit higher on the presser foot pressure. I'm really nervous about this. So, all right, so we got 2 layers here. Let me angle the camera down. 2 layers. I'm folding it in half. We're up to 4 layers. Now I'm going to fold it one more time to get us all the way up to 8 layers. This is a little bit crazy. This is a little bit crazy, Susie. Oh boy, I don't know. I don't know. That's what 8 layers. We just double check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You need really nimble fingers. 6, 7, 8. That's what 8 layers of denim looks like. And again, this is not just normal denim. This is not just normal denim. It's got spandex running through it. So this will be a little crazy. Hopefully we can fit this underneath the presser foot. Otherwise, we're going to have to apply Candido's idea of lowering the feed dogs or releasing the pressure and popping that presser foot bar up so we can fit it underneath. This is going to be off the charts. We're definitely not going to fit it underneath there. There's no way. There's no way we're going to fit it underneath there. So I think I'm going to do the quicker method. I'm going to do the quicker method and release all the pressure. See if I can fit this underneath then. No problem. See that? I'm actually physically raising the presser foot bar right now with all of the tension, all of the presser foot pressure off. All the pressure is off right now. So I'm physically lifting it up, and I was able to fit those 8 layers of denim underneath there. Was able to fit it underneath there. Okay. So we've got it in place. We could not have done that by just dropping the feed dogs because of the thickness of this. We had to go to this phase right here. Now we need to reapply the pressure by pinching these 2 together. We got to pinch these 2 together right here. Push here, and re-engage the pressure again. I'm even going to go a little bit higher. All right. I didn't try this off camera. I did not try this off camera. We do have a 90-14, a size 90-14 Schmetz leather needle. That's a pretty sturdy needle. But when you're sewing at 8 layers of heavy denim with spandex, is it going to be enough? Is it going to be enough? Or am I going to break this needle trying to go through all this denim? I don't know what's going to happen. Didn't try it. Offered the opportunity. Susie, one of my leaders, says, hey, let's go for it. So we're going to go for it. If we break a needle, I got more needles because Susie sent me a bunch of needles. So we'll see what happens. It'll be really interesting. I've never tried this particular sew off before. Never tried it before. 8 layers of heavy denim with spandex running through it using a leather needle. A leather needle, not a denim needle, a leather needle. And we're going to try to get this done. We'll do our best. We'll just do our best, right? All right, let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. All right. Yeah, I'm nervous. A little bit nervous. And I'm going to give it a little bit of a hand start so I don't stress that cogged belt. And we'll see what happens. I'm going to tag these down a little bit as well. I'm going to tag these down. I like it. I love it when my leaders push me a little bit. She could have come, with a soft side and said, hey, let's just do 6. 6 is great. 6 layers of denim with spandex, that's not an easy sew off. That's not a sissy thing. But Susie's a go-getter. So she's like, hey, 8, 8, 8. Yeah. So we're doing 8. All right. Keep your fingers crossed. Keep your toes crossed. Keep everything you got crossed, because this is a tough sew off. This is a very, very tough sew off. Wow. Spent a lot of time on this 19E special from 1966. I don't think I'm going to break it. I hope I don't break it. All right, let's see what happens. All right, girl, you got this. Swedish pride, Swedish strut. Do it. We got this. All right, here we go. Are we done? We're done? Do we do it? We can't tell. Are we? What? Seriously? You serious? What? Oh boy. Let's see if I can get this out now. Oh, wow. We did it, but we didn't do it. I'm going to show you what happened. We're going to try this again, see if we can improve on this. That spandex in this denim really, really makes it a difficult sew off, not just to get through it, but also from a tension standpoint. From a tension standpoint, it can create a little bit of a nightmare. So I'm going to make a couple of adjustments. I'm going to show you what we have now, but then we're going to sew it again, and we're going to see if we can make this better. We're always ready to make things better. That's what we're all about. So our top stitch looks great. I'm going to show it to you. Our lock stitch, not so much so. I would say it's probably one of the worst lock stitches I've ever seen. But look at the sew off we just did. Eight layers of denim with spandex. That's okay. That's all right. We're not quitters. We're going to get this done. We're going to get it done. So this is what we got on the top stitch. I'll show it to you. And then we're going to go after this again. We're going to go after it again. That is an absolute page 34 zigzag top stitch. Beautiful, beautiful top stitch. All right. Make sure you take the kids out of the room. Because here's our lock stitch with that first run. Again, we've got 8 layers with that spandex. Look at what we got for a lock stitch. That's not a good looking lock stitch. But you know what? I'm going to make a couple of adjustments. And we're going to see if we can't get this to look more like that. I love challenges. I love challenges, even 8 layers of denim. So I've got to release that presser again, get this back into place. Give us a little bit more presser foot pressure once I lock this back in place. I'm also going to make an upper tension adjustment as well. For this sew office alone, I'm going to take us up another 0.5. Actually, I'm going to take us up 1. I'm going to take us up from 7 up to 8. This is a really, really tough sew off with this spandex incorporated. Very, very tough sew off with this spandex. All right, let me get that take up arm all the way up. All right, we're going to give it a second try. See if we can improve on what we got from the first one. I don't think it can get much worse than what we got with that first run with 8 layers of denim with that spandex. It was an awful, awful lock stitch, but that's okay because we're always going to make things better. All right, let's give it a try again. See what we get on this second run. See what we get on the second run. I'm going to back it up just a little bit. Oh boy, that's tight. I better not try. All right. Run 2 of the spandex verse. The 8 layers of spandex versus the leather needle and the Swedish Beauty. All right, let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. Okay, here we go. Here we go. I did put my presser foot pressure back on, right? Yep. Okay. Here we go. Sometimes a little adjustment can make a big difference. Sometimes a little adjustment can make a big difference. So this is our top stitch again. We'll look at that first. We'll look at our top stitching. Waiting for it to zoom in. Trying to get the right lighting so we can see this more easily. Trying to get the correct lighting. Okay, that's again what we went through right there. 8 layers of heavy denim. Now let's look at that lock stitch. It was terrifying before. Let's see if we improved on it. I would say that's night and day. What do you think? I think we actually bumped it up maybe a little bit too high. So from this to this. Don't try this at home, kids. Don't try this at home. That's a crazy sew off. All right. Well, thanks for the challenge, Susie. Thank you, dear. I'm going to adjust our upper tension back a little bit. What's our run time? 226. All right, let's do a couple more sew offs. So we've done so far genuine elk hide, we've done genuine elk hide, 2 layers of saddle grade leather, velvet material, and now 8 layers of spandex based denim with an initial nightmare lock stitch, which we were able to correct with making 2 different adjustments to the machine. Yeah, I think we're having a little bit of success today. Just a little bit of success. Okay, we haven't done anything with the slow gear yet, so let's put the slow gear to work. Let's put the slow gear to work. All right, I got us back on zigzag. All right, now I got us on 3-point zigzag. I like the 3-point zigzag the way it presents. The 3-point zigzag is a real pretty stitch. Three-point zigzag. Pump that up. I think I'm going to move into sewing in a circle. We're going to try to wrap this up pretty quick. I'm going to use our slow gear now, I think, to help us out a little bit. So to turn on the slow gear on a Swedish Beauty like this, you're going to grab this bobbin winding assembly right here, and you're going to pull it out. So by doing that, we're going to reduce the gear ratio to a point where the machine will be sewing at 1/5 the normal speed. It doesn't change the power. It only reduces the speed down to 1/5 of the normal speed, which will give us a little bit more control. So let's try to see if we can sew around this protected full grain leather using the slow gear without me going off course too much, hopefully not too much. All right, this is what, a 3-point zigzag we're going to be doing. It's up to 4, going to take us down to about 1.5. So what I've adjusted our settings to is on stitch length, I'm at 1.5, 1.5, it looks like this. And on stitch width, I've taken us to 4, but I think I'm going to move us to move us to 3. I think we'll try it with 3 as a stitch width and 1.5 as a stitch length. Let's see what we think of this with this 3-point zigzag. Try to give us the right angle so you can see those stitches going down, hopefully. Yep, I think that's a good angle right there. All right. let's get this done. And now you'll be able to listen to the machine. It's going to sound different. It's going to sound different when it's running with that slow gear than when we were running it at a regular setting of full speed. Okay. So give it a listen and also give it a look. We'll check this out together. Okay. All right, here we go. I'm going to stop there just for a second. I'll clip my threads. Also going to just take a quick peek and see how our tension is looking. Tension is looking spot on. So let's continue. Let's continue. I'm going to try to keep sewing, and I'm going to try to move the camera closer so you can see those stitches getting laid down as we're going. So hopefully I don't sew off course. I'll do my best. Slowing it down more, slowing it down more. We're getting tighter, slowing it down more. You can see the advantage of the slow gear as we get closer and closer and tighter. I'm able to still maintain fairly straight sewing, holding the camera and also steering the leather underneath the presser foot. Slowing it down more. Slowing it down more. Slowing it down more. Slowing it down more. I think that's enough. I think that's probably enough, don't you? Oh, that's fun. That's a little fun. Yeah, it is. If you haven't sewn in a circle in a while, you got to do it. You got to sew in a circle just to say that you did it. And then we'll come up with t-shirts and we'll have gatherings, family gatherings for Cow Country. And it'll say, I sewed in a circle. We're not going to do a t-shirt that says, I sewed 8 layers of denim spandex. We're not going to buy that t-shirt. But isn't that just beautiful? And that is, again, protected full grain leather. Protected full grain leather has a coating on it. It's got a coating. Let me turn that light on, see if that helps. That doesn't help, does it? No, that doesn't help. It has a coating on it to protect it from staining and to give it more durability. So it's not an easy leather to get through at all. It's not an easy leather. This is probably about close to 4 ounces. You see it from the side there. But that slow gear, isn't that wonderful? That slow gear let me take it down to a pace where we were barely moving at the end. We were barely moving at the very end of that sew off. I'm curious to do something real quick. We're doing a lot of slow sewing. I'm just curious to take a temperature on our foot controller. These foot controllers are not designed really to accommodate a lot of slow sewing. As a matter of fact, one of my friends down in Texas that I prepared a Swedish Beauty for was doing a lot of free motion quilting, trying to sew it really slow. Didn't want to use the slow gear, just wanted to sew slow. And she ended up blowing out the capacitor on her foot controller, just like this one. So let's get a temp and see how we maintain. I service the foot controllers just like motors. I go through a detailed servicing of the foot controllers, so hopefully it ran cool. Let's see. That's a very respectable temperature. 75 degrees is crazy low, considering how much sewing we did at a slow pace. Let me check some other areas of the foot control, see if I can feel anything that feels remotely warm. They're on the side we're a little bit, whoops. They're on the side we're a little bit warmer. 78. That's really, really good. I was expecting almost 100, considering how slow we were sewing to get around those corners. 75. 78. 78. So that's great news. Great news because of the servicing of the foot controller along with the motor to optimize both. We were able to really slow that machine down using the slow gear and generate all of this stitching at a relatively slow rate. And the foot controller barely heated up. The ambient temperature of this room is probably around 68, almost 70 degrees. So we only had a net gain of about close to 7 degrees increase with all of that slow sewing. That's really, really, that's great news. That's great news. All right, let me see if I can take this out. We'll take a closer look. Oh, the other thing I need to remind us of is when we're looking then to raise that needle turning the balance wheel, right now it's locked because of the gear reduction. We've got to push this in, and then it frees up those gears, so then we can turn the balance wheel. Okay? Otherwise, you're going to force it, and you're going to break something. Don't do that. And I think due to time and due to the fact that it's a Sunday, there's so many other sew-offs we could do. We went super light with the velvet. We went elk hide. We went saddle grade. We did 8 layers of denim, initially having trouble, and then we really reeled it in and did a beautiful job. And now we've done saddle grade to demonstrate the slow gear. I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Unless somebody really, really wants to see something else, I'll show you the stitching here, and then we'll wrap up this live stream because it is Sunday, and let everybody enjoy the last of the weekend before you go back to the grind. Unless you're retired, then you don't grind much. You don't grind much if you're retired. Okay, so here's our top stitching. Really, really quite lovely. Quite lovely top stitching. Once the camera decides it's going to focus. There we go. Whoops, lost it. There we go. Beautiful, beautiful stitching. Definitely page 34, if not page 34 plus. trying to turn it so you can see all the stitching all the way around, because we went around and around and around and around and around and around and around. Totality of the stitching, really quite spectacular, isn't it? And all we did is sew in a circle. We didn't create an artistic masterpiece. We just sewed in a circle is all we did. Then finally our lock stitch, which depending on the angle, I think if I do the angle like this, you're going to be able to see it more easily. That's our lock stitching right there. Absolutely gorgeous lock stitching on this protected full grain leather. Well, I appreciate everybody's indulgence. I appreciate everyone's indulgence to pull off a live stream on a Sunday. It's incredibly rare. It's incredibly unusual to do this. And I know that the attendance has gone up and down as people have had to step away. People have had to step away and do things on Sunday, maybe go to church, maybe meet with family, maybe go out to brunch. There's all kinds of things happening on Sunday before the weekend wraps up and you go back to the work grind if you're still working or if you're doing other things outside of the home. So I didn't see specifically, but I think we had a peak attendance of 14 or 15 individuals. That is crazy good for a Sunday. Crazy good. I never expected numbers like that. And probably when everything is said and done, we will have had almost 100 people that popped on and popped off to check out what we were doing during this live stream on a Sunday. So I'm incredibly pleased, incredibly thankful for the help of Candido and Susie for taking care of the family during the live stream. We're going to wrap this up now. And everyone have a great week coming up, and watch for that Tuesday live stream presenting that Bernina 930. Okay, God bless everybody, and take care. We'll see you soon. I had to do cotton. I had to do cotton. Yeah. There we go. Take care, everybody. God bless. See ya.